What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Dude Hine Show. And today, I am joined by Frank Laplaca, host of the unofficial Bengals podcast. How you doing today, Frank?
All right, Jordan. Really excited to talk about the Bengals today after that big round one playoff win.
Yeah, so much to talk about. We're going to be kind of recapping the Bengals win over Baltimore, previewing the game this week against the Bills. I'm sure there's going to be multiple other topics we'll get into as well. But, we'll go ahead and talk about the Bengals win on Sunday to defeat the Baltimore Ravens 24-17. What were your kind of initial thoughts and reactions towards this win against the Baltimore Ravens?
Well, we kind of came into the game thinking that we were going to blow them out, and that's what I was thinking, a couple touchdowns. And we got off to that really fast start, and I thought we were going to run away with the game. And then you start realizing, this is an AFC North opponent. No matter who's better or worse, it's always a dogfight. It's always a close game. So rather than us being the Joe Burrow air show and just blasting out 4 touchdowns, this game was more of a street fight. And the Bengals showed that they could win a street fight as much as they could win a finesse air battle. So it was refreshing to see, but it was frustrating and nerve-wracking to watch, because at any moment I'm like, are you kidding me? Are the Ravens going to knock us out? And there's no more Bengals this year. When things turn on you, we're down at the half, you start getting that little just negative feeling. Although I'm positive about the team, I'm excited. I don't want to ever be like negative towards it, but you kind of get those feelings when you're under pressure like that. So it was a real roller coaster for me, but in the end, we won the street fight.
Yeah, roller coaster. That's a good way to describe it. Ups and downs, ups and downs. And I know we've talked about this, with last year's team when it came to, big games like this, and you didn't know we were going to pull through. We're able to. This is another one of those games, and it's just so different from just a couple of years ago when we the pre-Burrow era. When we have one of these games, when it's a roller coaster up and down, you don't know who's going to win. Deep down, we knew we were probably going to lose those games. But now, when we have Burrow as our quarterback, and you have games like this that can go either way, the fact that we're winning these games and we feel confidence because a lot of it has to do with Burrow. And I've said before, I was very confident about this game, but the Ravens, this is a much closer game than people thought. And really, when you look at the playoff games throughout the NFL, the majority of the games are pretty close. I know the 49ers game against the Seahawks was a blowout the second half, but the first half it was a close game. I mean, the Cowboys-Buccaneers game was a blowout, but some of these other games, they were kind of closer than people thought. And I feel like I'm not making an excuse for the Bengals, but when you play a team like the Ravens, who's so familiar playing against the Bengals, it would be different if this is a team who has not played the Bengals this year. But it's a team that's playing twice a year. It's a division rival. They already kind of know their tendencies, and same way it goes for Cincinnati knowing the Ravens' tendencies. But I'm glad we're able to pull through. And it's interesting because the one thing about the Ravens, I'm not going to say I was concerned about heading into this game, was the fact that our 2 regular season games, our offense kind of struggled. Our offense did not score more than 20 points in either of our, regular season games. And this trend continued, with obviously we scored 24 points, but the Sam Hubbard fumble recovery for a touchdown. That's something to me kind of keeping maybe an eye on when we take on the Bills this upcoming week.
Yeah, I'm hoping that against the Bills, it's going to be a little more unfamiliarity, because you're right. With the Ravens, we're getting to know each other so well. And I wasn't even discouraged that we only got 240 yards in that game. It wasn't the kind of game where it was high flying. We only had 7 possessions. There was a lot of long drives by both teams. So it wasn't like you had the ball a ton of times and could put up those kind of monopoly numbers. And I don't know. I really don't feel like that hangover is going to present itself against the Bills. The only thing is, now, I guess we're going to get into it in a little bit, is the offensive line. We're a lot more compromised. That might hurt our chances of scoring as many points as we normally would. But I'm pretty confident if we can protect Burrow that this offense is going to move the ball and score.
Jack Gamer, the game was kind of like our last regular season meeting. Was kind of a sloppy, pretty win. We could have definitely done better. Oh, absolutely. We didn't play great offensively or defensively, but we won. That's what matters most. Since we didn't play our best ball, Tyler Huntley actually stood a good fight. That's something I want to kind of get into in just a minute. But when you look at this game, it's kind of crazy when you look at, in my opinion, this first half absolutely was so fast. Like, it just seemed like within half an hour it was already halftime. And when you look at these when you look at these drives with both of these teams, they were very long possessions. The Bengals got out to a 3-0 lead. Baltimore threw an interception by Davis Gaither. I mean, he played amazing this game. Had a couple big plays on special teams. Had a big interception. I'm glad he's finally, getting some, big moments and stuff like that, because he's a guy I've always been a fan of, and I feel like when he's been given an opportunity, he's always made the most of it. But, the Bengals get that interception. They score a touchdown, and then McPherson misses the extra point. This is, I want to say it's a problem at this point. This should not be happening when last season you're getting compared to Justin Tucker, which that comparison to me I think is ridiculous. But McPherson's one of the best kickers in the NFL. He should not be continuously missing these extra points. That's something to keep an eye on, especially when we have a chance to play the Bills this week. We might play the Bills the following week if we win this week. When these close games, I don't want to have a situation where McPherson misses an extra point and that could come back and bite us and really hurt us. But McPherson missing these extra points is becoming a huge issue. That's definitely something I would not have thought I would say heading into the season. But hopefully he gets that figured out before this week when we play the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I still have a lot of faith in him. He's a great kicker. I just don't know if it's the case of having the new snapper and the new holder. You don't want to make too many excuses because, these guys, they practice it so many times. So you can't just say it's unfamiliarity because they've done thousands of snaps together. I don't know what's going on with him, but truthfully, if it comes down to him kicking a 53-yarder to beat the Bills with 4 seconds left on the clock, I'm going to believe that he can do that, Jordan.
I have confidence in him too, but it's just so weird. Like when Clark Harris got hurt, I can totally get the familiarity kind of, not really excuse, but kind of, he's not really used to playing with a long snapper. But at this point, he's basically played a full season with him. So, I don't know. You just wouldn't really expect these kind of miscues and mishaps by McPherson. I mean, he missed one extra point against the Patriots, but he missed really two but the second one didn't really count because there was a penalty on that play. But that's something maybe look into when we, in these next coming weeks. But like I mentioned, when the Bengals scored, McPherson missed a extra point. It was 9-0. And then, Baltimore, I was very impressed with Tyler Huntley. I know lots of people have kind of said, oh, well, he didn't play great. I thought he played very, very well. Baltimore scored on the next possession, made it 9-7. We fumbled that play. It was a fumble by Hurst. Baltimore gets a field goal to make it 10-9. And it was 10-9 at halftime. Baltimore started the second half with the ball. They weren't able to do anything. We scored the next drive. It was 17-10. Baltimore had an amazing drive at second half. That following drive, they scored in just 5 plays. It's 17-17. The Bengals punt on a 3-and-out, and then Baltimore gets the ball on a goal line play. A huge fumble recovery by Sam Hubbard. One of the biggest plays, I'm going to say, in franchise history. I could not believe it. It was one of those situations where I wasn't really looking at the TV by the time the snap happened. The next thing you know, Hubbard's running with the ball. I was going crazy. Could not believe it. Absolutely amazing play by Hubbard. He's been one of the more underrated defenders on this Bengals defense for the past couple of years. He definitely steps up there when you need it. Baltimore had a 3-and-out the next drive. The Bengals punt, Ravens punt. Then the Bengals have a 3-and-out. And then the Ravens have a 10-play drive to go for a Hail Mary, and they were just barely missed it. Sammy Watkins nearly caught it on a deflection there. But, I mean, that Sam Hubbard play to me is going to go down as one of the biggest plays in franchise history. What play do you think is, I'm going to say, bigger, the Hubbard play this year or the Jermaine Pratt interception last year?
Well, they both saved the game and advances to the next round, but I'm going to go with Pratt only because that was the first win in decades. So I think that one was a little bit more monumental because now we're kind of getting used to winning playoff games. But this one was huge, and it was such an exciting play. The Pratt, it was a goal line interception, massive play. But to have like a 98-yard return from a defensive lineman, with a Raven almost about to catch him, it was a really exciting once-in-a-lifetime kind of play. And if you think about the 3 guys involved in that play, they're all having their best seasons as Bengals right now. Jermaine Pratt, Logan Wilson with the tip away, and, of course, Sam Hubbard has been having a really great year and had the big 98-yard touchdown and just changed the day for us. And going back to what I was saying at the top of the show, that was one of those moments where I was like, oh, man, all right, they're going to punch it in. We're going to be down 7 in the fourth quarter. Joe Burrow with Jackson Carman blocking for him is going to have to create some magic. That was my PTSD from being a Bengal fan kicking in. But, man, that play just changed it all.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Jermaine Pratt interception as well. If we did not win that game, I feel like it's going to be – that would have been kind of similar to the Burfict interception. I still think that Burfict interception is one of the best plays in franchise history. I know that might kind of be out there, but the fact that if we would have won that game. That would have been so much to us, just like that Pratt interception last year. But the Pratt just play just because of the significance of it. 31 years as a postseason win, and then we get some momentum, and then we end up, nearly getting a Super Bowl victory. This Hubbard play is unheard of, absolutely crazy. One of the craziest plays and touchdowns really in NFL postseason history. Just the odds of that happening are so slim. The Ravens fumbling in itself is, would be lucky for the Bengals, but returning a touchdown, that's just so fortunate. A great play by Hubbard. But it is so crazy when you look at this Bengals and Ravens game. But 24-17, I already kind of said, this is the third game this season the Bengals offense did not really perform great. Like I said, 3 games we played Baltimore, we did not score more than 20 points on any of those on offense. When you look at the defense, what were your kind of thoughts and reactions towards this Bengals defense going up with the Ravens this past Sunday?
A couple things that I noticed from the defense. One, we only let up 3 receptions in the whole game to wide receivers. Now, I know, Huntley's playing with a bad shoulder. He's a number 2 quarterback. They don't have a great wide receiving core as it is, but only 3 receptions to wide receivers. I thought that was amazing. And another hidden factor that's contributing to a lot of wins for the Bengals is the tackling in the secondary. If you think about it, Eli Apple is a tough corner, and he sticks his nose in there. You saw it. Even after he hurt his neck collarbone, he was still making tackles and throwing his body in there. Cam Taylor-Britt, excellent tackler. We know about Bates and Bell. And what about Hilton? A 5'10", 180 guy knocking down Dobbins in the backfield. So the tackling by the guys in the secondary is really contributing, as well as the interior play of the defensive line, as well as the play of the linebackers. I mean, I can compliment all 11, 12, 13 guys on this defense. But those are some of the things I've been noticing is, like I said, that the underdog factor of tackling with your defensive backs.
And, Jet Gamer says, we were talking kind of talking about McPherson. I don't like to make a big deal out of McPherson missing. Everyone misses. Even though he's a really good kicker, he will have his misses. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And, what you're saying about our defensive backs tackling, it's weird because Mike Hilton is a corner, Eli Apple is a corner. You don't often see really good tacklers for corners. That is certainly not the case with Mike Hilton. He is a terrific tackler as a corner. And I think I saw a stat. He only played like 27 snaps, or not many snaps on defense because, playing with the Baltimore scheme, you got to kind of, play them a little bit different compared to other teams. But the fact that Hilton did not play many snaps, it literally felt like every single time he was on the field, he was making a huge play. I mean, he's one of the best slot corners in the NFL. I know Eli Apple, the national media loves to hate on him. I'm not a huge fan of him, not going to lie, but he is much better than the national media gives him credit for. I mean, we're talking about Eli Apple, a guy who last season had a higher man-to-man PFF grade than some say the best cornerback in the NFL, Jalen Ramsey. I mean, those guys have been stepping up and have been a big reason our success last year in the postseason, and a big reason for our success this year throughout the regular season, and helping us big on Sunday against the Ravens. But something with the Ravens, I kind of briefly mentioned it. Tyler Huntley, to me, played freaking amazing. Like, despite he was injured, I don't know if you're a Ravens fan, what more you could possibly want from Tyler Huntley. Like, I've seen people say, oh, he sucked, and, he should have played better. He played very good. When you look at this Bengals defense, the Bengals play the Ravens better than anybody against the Ravens. This Bengals defense plays the Ravens better than anyone. And, Huntley still played pretty good. He had a decent amount of rushing yards, had some passing yards as well. That amazing play where he was, the snap was behind him. He picked it up, still managed to get a passing yards. That was terrific. And, this is not, I don't like talking about this because I don't know if people have noticed or not. I don't like the Ravens too much. I always talk bad about them. I'm talking good about them. I'm not really used to this, but Huntley played a great game. But I said this when it was announced we were going to play the Ravens. If we won, okay, well, you beat the Ravens without Jackson. If you lost, like, holy crap, you lost to the Ravens without Lamar Jackson. This excuse and this BS narrative, if Lamar Jackson would have played, the Ravens would have beat the Bengals. That cannot have been farther away from the truth. When you look at Lamar Jackson is a worse quarterback in the playoffs than Tim Tebow. That tells you how bad he is. I mean, Lamar Jackson has less passing yards per game than Tim Tebow. When you look at Lamar Jackson, he is 1-3 in the playoffs, 3 passing touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Tebow has 2 passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Jackson has a worse quarterback rate in the playoffs than Tim Tebow, not to mention that The Bengals play Lamar Jackson better than any defense in the NFL. Lamar Jackson has not played in a month and a half, and he has not practiced for a month and a half. But yes, keep on telling me that this guy who hasn't played in a month and a half and is historically bad in the postseason, if he would have played, they would have beat the Bengals. That is so freaking stupid. I'm tired of this excuse. Regardless if Huntley would have played, regardless if Jackson would have played, the Bengals still would have beat the Ravens. And that's what I said, last week. I wanted to play Jackson opposed to Huntley because I felt like with the limited mobility of Lamar Jackson, Huntley gave them a better chance to win. And I feel like we clearly saw that on Sunday. But this narrative that if Jackson would have won, Jackson would have played, Baltimore would have won is entirely, absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's not fair. I even heard Dobbins say that if Lamar was in there, they would have won the game, and that's really bad for him to say when Huntley put his whole body on the line. He was playing with a bad shoulder. We have kind of cracked the code on Lamar Jackson, and as also he's kind of, I thought he kind of reached his peak, and he's on this kind of route in his career because you can't be a running quarterback forever, and he doesn't really have the great accuracy that great quarterbacks need. There's some issues with decision making and stuff like that. So, all right. So if Kappa and Collins would have played, then they wouldn't have had any hits on Burrow. We can just say, you can make any excuse for anything. And of course, I guess we would do the same, right? If Burrow missed the game and we lost, we'd be like, well, if Joe was in there, we would have won. So it makes sense that as a Ravens fan, you would say that as an excuse. But the reality is we won the game and we've beaten Lamar Jackson. We've beaten Huntley. And we'll beat anyone else that team wants to throw in front of us.
And you mentioned the comments from J.K. Dobbins. I thought that was ridiculously stupid. Like, there's a chance Tyler Huntley could be your starting quarterback next season, and depending if Lamar Jackson leaves or not. And the fact that you're basically putting him under the bus and, downgrading his really good performance, despite what people think, is really dumb. And I feel like that's kind of I'm not going to say they have a bad locker room, but when you look at some of the comments towards that and some of the other comments, that's just kind of dumb coming a guy from Dobbins who's been in the league several years. You kind of expect something, you don't really expect a guy like him saying that. But I thought that this comment basically downgrading Huntley was just kind of dumb by J.K. Dobbins. But the Bengals defeat the Ravens 24-17. And you mentioned the injuries on the offensive line. We already had injuries to Leo Collins. We already had an injury to Alex Kappa. Now the injuries in the offensive line continue for Cincinnati as Jonah Williams goes down. What were your initial thoughts, reactions towards Jonah Williams getting hurt and Jackson Carman coming in?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy because during the game I was getting so mad at Jonah. He let up a couple pressures. He was standing up. He made a lot of good plays, but he let up the sack. There was a couple other plays where he let up hits. A running play where he misses a block like blatantly, and I'm getting all mad at him. And then when he goes out, I'm like, oh no. So, it's kind of unfounded. You're getting mad at the guy when he's in there, and then you're panicking when he goes out of the lineup. So I kind of owe him an apology for overreacting there. And that is a shame. He dislocated one kneecap. Now he dislocated the other kneecap. I mean, that's a lot of trauma to your lower body, and that's something that's not going to go away quickly. I don't know when we're going to get him back. I mean, they're saying week to week. The way it looked like he was done for the year. I don't know. Jackson Carman went in and played his natural college position of left tackle. He also let up a sack, but he didn't do as badly as I thought when he was in there. Still, Buffalo's got a week to game plan against him, and they have a great defensive line and great linebackers and good blitz schemes. So we're going to really have to see how well Carman holds up. And if you look at last year, it's not really any physical issues with Jackson Carman. Like, he has good movement skills and he's very, very powerful. He makes a lot of mental errors and he misses stunts and stuff like that. Again, in this game, we didn't get a big enough sample size. Almost like with Sharping, we're still not sure if those guys can really hold up under fire. And Sharping had his issues this game as well. So Jackson Carman, this is your chance, man. If anyone can get word out to Jackson Carman, this is it. You have a chance to be a quality left tackle on the best team in football and go through the playoffs and into the Super Bowl. He controls his own destiny. I'll give him a B- for how he looked when he came in this game. If he can just keep that around that level, that'll be enough to get wins for us. But very big concerns if you think about it, the whole offensive line has been wiped out except for a rookie. And of course, Karras in the middle, which has really been the glue that's kept it all together. But it's Karras, a rookie, and 3 backups right now. And man, that's scary. You get thoughts of last year's postseason with Burrow just getting assaulted on every down. And although we went far in spite of that, you can't rely on that formula. If they hit your quarterback every play, you're going to break down and you're going to have a hard time winning games. So it's up in the air right now. If Jackson Carman plays remotely like he did this week, it's fine by me. But any less than that, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, when it was announced that Williams got hurt, it was one of those. I completely agree with you. I was getting so frustrated with him, and then he gets hurt. I'm like, well, crap. Like, I don't think he's good, but I'd rather have them and whoever the backup would be. And but Carmen comes in. He wasn't great. He wasn't terrible, but he was serviceable, and that's what you just need for Cincinnati. He doesn't need to be, a Willie Anderson or a Whitworth. He doesn't need to play amazing. He just needs to be going to be average. That could be good for Cincinnati. And when you look at this Ravens defense, the Ravens defense had one of the best defenses in the NFL. And there might have been a couple plays where Carmen got beat, but overall, I thought he played good given the circumstances. I'm sure he was not thinking that he was going to be playing left tackle in that game. Carmen only played about 10 offensive snaps. It seemed like the whole season. But, I think that those snaps were actually the week before when we played the Ravens in the regular season finale. But when you look at, Carmen, when you look at our offensive line, it's so crazy. Our offensive line was by far our weakest link, in the postseason last year. It's our weakest link right now, but we struggled against the Ravens. There's no doubt about it in the offensive line. But there was times where you kind of saw, offensive line look decent. When you look at our offensive line, we have 3 injuries. The 2 starters we have, neither one of those players were even on the team last year. It's kind of crazy to think about that. But I don't know. When you have injuries to Collins, when you have Kappa, and now Jonah Williams, I've seen so many people say that we should, try to get Andrew Whitworth. I just don't get that. It does not make any sense to me whatsoever, because when you look at Whitworth, he's a guy who hasn't played in a year. Carmen, I know it was a small sample size. He played all right. I'm taking my chances with Carmen over Whitworth. I know I might sound kind of crazy, but when you already having these backups come in and then you have Whitworth who doesn't really know the scheme and everything like that, it just kind of brings, he'll have to learn it very quickly. It kind of be complicated for this offensive line. But I don't really like the idea of having Whitworth at left tackle. I think we'd be better off having Carmen right now. I know it was a small sample size, but I was pretty impressed what I saw from Carmen against the Ravens.
Yeah, and going back to the Whitworth thing, I mean, that's fun talk. That's sports radio talk. Just like the last couple of years, it was like, oh, bring Geno Atkins back when you're thin on the defensive line. But obviously, these guys are retired for a reason. And if there was any chance that Whitworth had anything left in the tank, he'd be signing up for this because it's a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And his body probably made that decision for him last year. He limped through last year and barely got through it and rode out in glory. And he got a broadcasting job. His family is probably all invested in him being retired, just like Tom Brady. So it kind of makes sense why he's not coming back. But it is a fun thought. I mean, I wish it would happen. But if he's not here now, it probably means that he isn't in physical shape enough to do it.
Yeah, completely agree. And when you look at this offensive line, I think when you look at the injury to Jonah Williams, it's a good thing. Like Williams was going to be like, when you look at Williams, it's a good thing he was out. When he got injured, he was not out before this game started, because when you're the Baltimore, and if you could have had a chance to scheme against Carmen heading into this game with him having the chance to start at left tackle, I feel like that we might be home right now. We might not have won that game. If Baltimore would have had more of a chance to look at film against Carmen. But the fact Williams got hurt in that game, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but when you look at it, I think it's better off on the offensive line wise that he got injured in that game opposed to him getting injured before this game. Because this Baltimore defense is already elite to begin with. But if you have a whole week to prepare going up against Jackson Carmen, I feel like that would have kind of possibly led to disaster for Cincinnati.
Yeah, and now we're looking at that with Buffalo. They're going to have a whole week to prepare for Jackson Carmen. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at him. They're going to look at tape from last year and see all the stunts that he got beat on, and we're going to see that. I'm glad they don't have Miller and Basham still healthy, because that would be crazy if they could just keep rotating a different pass rusher on him every play. They're not that deep, but Leslie Frazier's going to come up with some schemes to really target Sharping and Jackson Carmen. And I think, I don't know if you want to get into the whole Buffalo game planning right now, but one of the things I think we need to do is start the game off with a lot of running plays, or at least a 50-50 mix, because you don't want to go out and throw 8 of your 10 first plays and your offensive linemen are backing up. When you're in pass protection, you're kind of in defense mode. When you're an offensive lineman in a run play, you get to attack. So I think the key is starting off the game against the Bills with these guys attacking, just so they can build some confidence, get some aggression, set the tone, rather than them just be on their heels and, set up for failure by us passing a lot early. So I think it's important to have a good 50-50 mix over the first couple drives against the Buffalo Bills.
I 100% agree, but that's the thing that concerns me, because when you look at Mixon this season, he's only had one game this year with more than 84 rushing yards, and that was the Panthers game. That was one of the craziest games ever for a running back in NFL history. Besides that game, he's not had a single performance of 100 rushing yards this season. And I know Pirine has had a decent amount of carries as of late. He's played pretty good. But when you look at this Bengals offense, we just have not been able to get the run going whatsoever. And that's what really concerns me. I was heading into the postseason, I was kind of nervous that we could have a situation where we would become one-dimensional, because it really has seemed like this whole season we've become one-dimensional because we just haven't got the run established at all. But the fact now, if you're one-dimensional with Burrow passing 45, 50 times a game with 3 starting offensive linemen out, that is extremely concerning. I don't care who you're playing, because that's going to give a much higher chance of him getting injured, sacked, hit, and everything like that. Possibly more interceptions, who knows? But I agree with that. But to me, that's kind of alarming, because when you look at this Bengals run game this season, it's not worked out whatsoever so far this season.
Yeah, and you go to the Bills, and Milano's an all-pro, and Edmonds is a sideline-to-sideline linebacker. So they're not going to be easy to run on. So it might be a case of 3 yards on first down, 3 yards on second down, and then win it for us, Joe Burrow, on third down. I mean, that's probably going to be the answer, because with this Bills defense and the way that we've been running the ball, we're not going to be getting those chunk yards on the ground, unfortunately. And Kappa was a big part of that run game success, just like La'el Collins. So those two pieces are out, and that could present problems. And, when we came out against the Ravens, if you look, the first couple drives, we were running the ball very well. But then they kind of caught up with the offensive line. Our offensive line started losing their one-on-one battles in the run game. And after the first drive or two, we really could not run the ball. So, we're going to have to look at what we did right on those first couple drives and hope we can replicate that against the Bills. But regardless, even if we're getting 2-3 yards on the ground, we're going to have to stick with it, until we can't stick with it anymore.
And when you look at, I can't remember Mixon's stats from Sunday, but our season finale against the Ravens, Mixon had 11 carries for 27 yards. That's not going to cut it at all. And that's basically what he's had the whole season when you look at it. Take away from the Panthers game, he's not really been able to get it going whatsoever on the ground, and it doesn't make sense, because this offensive line is not as bad as people think. When I know it wasn't great on Sunday, but when you're having a guy who played 10 snaps going back to his college position, what do you expect when we only have 2 real starters on the offensive line? But, Mixon should be running better than what he has this season. And something to look at when you go back and look at our, matchup against the Bills, that was, ended, on January 2nd, with a DeMar Hamlin injury. Heading into that week, Mixon was basically, I'm not going to say he was bad-mouthing, but he was saying, this linebacker core for the Buffalo is really good, but they're not the Ravens. But I mentioned a couple of minutes ago how it was really stupid for Dobbins. This is his 3rd season. That was so freaking stupid by Mixon. He's been in the league for several years now. He should know he should just not say that. That doesn't make any sense to me. He should know when to keep his mouth shut. And when you look at Matt Milano and Edmonds, one of the best linebacker cores, duos in the NFL, both terrific at their position. Milano is having a terrific year, and so is Edmonds. They're going to be ticked off. It's going to be on their bulletin board. You're going to be looking at that the whole week of practice. That's something else when you look at Buffalo. They have, Mixon's already struggled enough. It will be different if he's having a great year, but to say that was pretty dumb. And when you look at this, Bills linebacker core, they're going to be excited to go up against Mixon, a guy who's been struggling pretty much the whole season.
Yeah, I'm really not sure why he said that, because we don't make those mistakes. Under this coaching staff and with the leadership that we have on this team, you don't see us doing a lot of bulletin board fodder for other teams. And that was just one case where, I don't know, his words just got ahead of his brain and he said the wrong thing. I'm sure he wishes he didn't say it. And you're right. Those linebackers cannot wait to get a strip on Mixon and, defeat him and embarrass him. So bad move by Joe Mixon, but, hopefully he can back it up in this game by running hard.
Kind of talking about, this Bengals offensive line and everything, kind of, what we should be, doing early, kind of establishing a run if we're able to. When you look at this Bengals offense line, when you look at this Bills defense is really good, but they've taken a significant step back once Von Miller got hurt against the Lions. When you look at the Bills this season, in the 11 games that Von Miller played, they had 30 sacks. In the 5 games without Von Miller, they've had 10 sacks. When you look at 11 games when Von Miller played this season, they had 13 interceptions in 11 games. When the 5 games that Von Miller did not play this season, they had 4 interceptions. 3 of those were in one game. So even when you look at in their secondary as well, not just their pass rush and their rushing yards per game, their total yards per game, but even when you look at their secondary, the amount of interceptions have went down significantly with Von Miller plays. It just seems like everything for this Buffalo defense has not really been the same since Von Miller's injury. And the Bengals are very, very, very fortunate. I cannot stress it enough that Von Miller is not playing this game. Even if Jonah Williams would be playing, I'd be really even if he was starting and we were playing Miller, I'd be nervous. But I mean, with Carmen now, only 2 starters for this offensive line, we're getting a huge, huge, huge break when not having to play against Von Miller, who, even though he's getting up there in age, he's had one of his best seasons in quite some time. But the Bengals are very lucky Von Miller will not be playing for the Bills on defense this Sunday.
Yeah, and you need a little bit of luck to make a Super Bowl run. And I was waiting for when the luck was going to start for us, because last year, there was a few breaks, won a few games maybe we shouldn't have. We have that Drew Lock strip when the Broncos almost beat us, stuff like that. I mean, they're big plays by people, but they're in the grand scheme, they're a little bit lucky. And if you think about it, we got that luck recently. The Ramondre Stevenson fumble, the ball falling right into Hubbard's hands. And now facing the Buffalo Bills without Von Miller and with Josh Allen having that compromised elbow, which has been downplayed so much, but I know what it's like to have an elbow injury, and he is not right now. So those are just 3 examples of us kind of getting a little bit lucky this year. And those are the things that you need, as well as having a great team and playing great games and making big plays. You need a little bit of luck. And fortunately, we've gotten that.
And when you look at this season, the first 4 games of the year this year, I thought the Bengals were the most luckiest team in the NFL. And they were 2-2, but when you look at the quarterbacks they faced, they did not play really any good quarterbacks. I think they played Jackson the 4th or 5th week, but when you look at the quarterbacks they faced early, they played Trubisky, Cooper Rush, Joe Flacco, quarterbacks who aren't even starters. They were very fortunate these first couple weeks. They were not able to really take full advantage of that. And then you look recently, like you're saying, that Stevenson fumble, let's be honest, extremely lucky. The odds of happening it are very, very low of Hubbard returning that for a touchdown. We've gotten lucky with some of those plays. When you look at last season, there were so many times we got lucky. I mean, when you look at it, really, we won in the final play of the game of all 3 of our playoff games. The kick against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, the kick against the Titans. I know Pratt was an interception, but after that it was just no down. So we really won in the final 3 plays of the game. Even go back and look at some of those kicks that we won against the Vikings. We won against the Chiefs. McPherson had a couple game-winning kicks as well. And when we had so much luck last season, we've had some luck this season. Not as much as last year, but we've won even more games. And to me, that's what kind of separates this team than last season. And even if this team doesn't make it to the Super Bowl, in my opinion, I think that's kind of what makes this team better than last year. We had so much luck last year, and we were still barely able to pull off some victories. This season, our luck is not nearly as much as it was last year, and we're on like an 8-9 game winning streak, and we're beating teams by a decent margin. Even if we don't win the AFC this year, I think this team, in my opinion, I know it might be a bold take, I think this team is way, way, way better compared to last season's team.
I agree with that. I think this is a more well-rounded team. And, we got lucky last year by not having a lot of injuries. And the same thing happened this year until right now. Unfortunately, the injuries hit us at the end of the season. But yes, I do think that this team is better. And you're right. It's so hard to go back to the Super Bowl, no matter how good your team is. And when you think about who we have to play, it's Mahomes and the Chiefs, it's Allen and the Bills. Those are hard teams to get by that most teams in the league cannot do. And, I think we're the best team in the AFC right now, but we're going to have to go on the road to both of those places. And no matter who's a better team, you have a disadvantage when you're on the road, especially in the playoffs. So, if we don't make the Super Bowl, it doesn't mean that this team isn't as good as last year. I 100% agree with that. It's going to be a rough road. And if we can do it, I mean, if we can get by both of these teams and go into the Super Bowl. There's no reason why we can't beat any of those NFC teams if we get by Buffalo and KC on the road.
Heading into the postseason, really even before the postseason started, I said whoever makes it out of the AFC will win the Super Bowl. I still stand by that. It's us, the Chiefs, or the Bills. I think the Jaguars are good, but I just don't think they're good enough to beat the Chiefs. I think it's going to be one of us, one of those three against the 49ers. The 49ers, in my opinion, look by far the best team in the NFC. I don't even think it's remotely close. And it sucks because when you look at, like, if we were in the NFC, I would feel so much more comfortable, like, being in the Super Bowl. Not really every year, but, like, NFC Championship game, something like that. But this AFC is just so much harder because even when you look at the teams who should have been good this year, missed the playoffs. Like the Steelers, I know they were hot towards the end. They won 7 out of 9 games. The Raiders went to playoffs. The Broncos played like crap. Nobody thought they'd be that bad. And now wait till next year. I mean, it's going to be even harder because this Jaguars team's going to be better. The Broncos should be better. The Raiders should be better. The Steelers might be in the playoffs. Watson has some games under his belt for the Browns. They could be a playoff contender. As much as it, when you look at the AFC, how difficult it is this year for some of these teams, it's going to be a billion times harder next year. When you look at these AFC playoff standings, there's going to be so many teams left out. Despite when you look at the third team, the third team in the AFC might be better than the first team in the NFC. It's crazy how much better the AFC right now is than the NFC.
Yeah, and it really comes down to having that great quarterback play. There's some decent quarterbacks in the NFC, but I think obviously with Brady and Rodgers, they're kind of reaching the end there. Hurts is having a great year. He's banged up right now. But the AFC, we have the big three of Burrow, Mahomes, and Allen. And it's a league where quarterback and head coach are one of the biggest factors on winning. And the AFC has 3 of those teams that have, the gold standard at those 2 things.
Oh, 100%. And Jack Gamer, the Bills versus Dolphins game, it was hectic. Allen almost lost to a backup, a third-string quarterback rookie from Skylar Thompson. Makes absolutely no sense. And Josh Allen is typically really good. The Dolphins-Bills game really came down to those drops. Skylar Thompson threw some really good passes that were dropped by receivers. When you look at Skylar Thompson, his completion percentage was like 45%. Nobody thought the Dolphins were going to win this game. I know the Bills won, and that's what matters most if you're Buffalo. But if you're the Bengals, you have to be kind of glad and excited that, this Bills team did not look great. I mean, they gave up over 30 points to a third-string quarterback. Allen, I know he had a couple of touchdowns, but he had multiple turnovers as well. And when you look at recently, the turnovers have kind of been an issue for Josh Allen. I believe he has 14 interceptions this year. When you look at it, that's pretty bad. When you look at, I think Dak Prescott leads the NFL with 15. So he just went behind Prescott for the most interceptions in the NFL this season. And it's not like he's playing like these elite defenses. Yes, the Jets have a good defense. The Patriots are top 5 in interceptions. The Dolphins have an okay defense, but it's not like he's playing the Bengals. It's not like he's playing the Steelers or Ravens. This is the AFC East. The AFC East has nowhere near good defense as the AFC North. And when you look at Josh Allen's turnovers and his fumble issues at times as well, can really benefit the Bengals in this matchup.
I'm also wondering. I don't know the stats of his 14 interceptions. How many were pre-elbow injury and post-elbow injury? But that might be factoring in as well. A lot of interceptions come with poor decision making. But sometimes interceptions come when you think you can get it into a window and you overestimate your abilities. And I don't have a breakdown of all his interceptions. Maybe that's a little bit of what's going on right now. But you are right. These AFC North defenses are better than the AFC East defenses. And he's played them 6 times over the course of this year. So he's used to, that being the standard for him. And it's going to be a little bit of a wake-up call when he's got this explosive Bengal defense with a great defensive line, active linebackers, and secondary who can cover and tackle. And we're very good at spying running quarterbacks because we've had a lot of practice with Lamar Jackson over the years. So that might take a little bit of a toll on the Josh Allen running game as well. So a lot can factor in. The Bills have not been playing as well as they were in the beginning of the year. Let's admit, the first few games of the year, we thought they were going to run away with the AFC. We always believe in the Bengals, but the Bills looked like the best team. And like I said, I keep going back to it. That elbow injury is no joke. And I think things changed just a little bit for them. And of course, they don't want to publicize it. Yeah, his elbow's really compromised. That's why we're not as good as we were, because then, teams are going to be extra targeting that. But I think that is a factor. And I think that he is going to turn the ball over against us. And, Yeah, I'm glad we're catching this Josh Allen rather than week 1, week 2 Josh Allen.
And when you look, I believe the Bengals have only played Josh Allen once under Lou Anarumo. That was I think, in 2019. That was before Burrow. I'm not really going to count the game on the second. I mean, that was one drive. It's not enough to really look at,
Yeah.
who's going to win this game and stuff like that. But that was when we still had Dalton. Little bit has changed since then. I mean, we've won 4 playoff games. Allen's a top 5 quarterback now. Burrow's, been so great for this franchise. But I'm so intrigued to look at Lou Anarumo against Josh Allen. When you look at Anarumo, he's really the first defensive coordinator to figure out Mahomes, the first one to figure out Jackson. 3-0 against Mahomes. Nobody even comes close to stopping Jackson like Lou Anarumo's defense. I mean, I know Brady's not what he used to be. He's not even close. But, I mean, Lou Anarumo's defense forced 4 turnovers against Tom Brady. Not in a game, but in one half. That is just absolutely insane. So I'm very intrigued to see what Lou Anarumo has in store for Josh Allen and Buffalo's offense. Like you said, when you look at years past, the Bengals have kind of had a hard time stopping some mobile quarterbacks. But as of late, when you look at guys like Jackson and some of these other guys, the Bengals have been able to kind of contain them some. But, obviously you wouldn't expect Allen to be, as mobile, like you said, with his shoulder injury. But that is something I cannot wait to see how Lou Anarumo will go up against Allen and the Bills offense.
Yeah, he's definitely going to have a game plan in place. He's going to have a spy in place, whether it's, Trey Flowers or one of the safeties, or Dax Hill might be a good option to spy as well. Although, Dax didn't have his best game this week with the penalties, and he needs a little more field awareness for that kind of thing. But the second half, I think, is really where it's going to come down. We're going to come in with a game plan. They're going to come in with their own script. We're going to collide and see what works and see what doesn't work. But like all season long, he hopefully will make those second half adjustments and really neutralize the Bills. And just a thought that I mentioned on my podcast, I don't want to go too far into it, but we're a Super Bowl contender right now, and probably for the next few years, with the coaching staff, the skill positions, the defense, Joe Burrow, and Coach Anarumo's schemes and second half adjustments. He's going to get head coaching offers. And I don't know, I'm just thinking out of the box. And a lot of coaches, as soon as you get that head coaching offer, you just run. The first owner with a checkbook and a smile, you're going to take the job because you want to be a head coach. But, what's in it for Anarumo to go to Denver and be, 9-8 for the next 3 years? I would almost rather see the Bengals set a precedent and say, yeah, you can go be a head coach if you want, but we're going to pay you as much as they would pay you to stay as our defensive coordinator. There's no salary cap on coordinators and coaches. If you want to really keep this Super Bowl window intact, I think it's really key to keeping him around. And I know that's not the way of the NFL. When these guys get a job, they go. But maybe money can change his mind in this case. And in this case, I think it'd be worth it for a couple-year deal at an inflated price for a coordinator, just to keep this magic alive and be able to make a Super Bowl run for the next couple years and not just have it end when he leaves. Because now a new defensive coordinator is going to come in. There's going to be an adjustment period. We might drop a couple games that we would have won. A whole lot goes into that. But either way, I'd love to see us find a way to keep Anarumo from leaving and going and taking a head coaching job. And the way to do that is with this.
I agree 1,000,000%. And when you look at the Bengals this year and last year, everybody loves to give Burrow the credit for his success. He's been a huge part, but Anarumo is up there towards the top with Burrow. I mean, he's just done a sensational job this year and last year. And I was talking to somebody the other day. If we keep Lou Anarumo, it's automatic win in the offseason. I don't really care what happens. When you look at Anarumo, I thought there was a 0% chance he was going to be even on this coaching staff this season. I thought for sure after last season that what he was able to do against Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, some of these other great quarterbacks, there was no way he was going to be on this coaching staff. As of right now, looking at some of these teams, I know the Broncos kind of make some sense. They've kind of had a recent history of getting some defensive-minded coaches, but there's not really any teams that I've seen that are really interested in Lou Anarumo. I don't understand it, but I'll gladly take it because I want Anarumo on this team as long as Burrow's on this team. And I agree 100%. I would give him make him the highest paid defense coordinator in the league. He has done such a phenomenal job. You cannot let him leave. The Bengals have a huge mistake if they let him go. Even if he's offered a head coaching job, you would, like you said, give him basically whatever his head coaching job, let's say, would be with the Texans or Broncos. But Lou Anarumo is so vital to this Bengals team. If you take him away, this Bengals defense will take a huge step back. And I know this Bengals defense is good, but Lou Anarumo gets the best out of his players. Eli Apple, before he got here, was 100% a bust. He did not do nothing in the NFL. He got here, then like I said earlier, he had a higher PFF grade than Jalen Ramsey this year. He's done such a good job this year, too. To the B.J. Hill, he was not really a big name. They traded him his final year on his deal with the Giants. Huge season his last year with first season with Cincinnati. Gets a 3-year contract with around $40 million. He's had a great year this year. Lou Anarumo schemes terrifically against these elite quarterbacks, and he gets the most out of his players. And when you look at it, I don't know what you could possibly ask for more than Lou Anarumo, because he has done a phenomenal job and has just been so important in his Bengals team, really, this year and last year.
100% agreed. And that's why they have to find a way to keep him around. And, maybe the enticing part is don't go somewhere and go 500 for 2-3 years and get fired and never get a job again. Win a couple championships in Cincinnati, then you can go out there and write your own ticket. And, any team would want you as their head coach, not just, like you said, the Texans or the Broncos.
And when you look at it, I feel like we kind of see that just too much in the past. A guy who might have 1 or 2 good years as a coordinator, and then, like you said, as soon as he gets an offer, he's out the door. And I feel like I get that to a degree, but you kind of want to build your resume up more. I mean, if you have the chance to stay with your team, there's a lot less pressure being a defense coordinator compared to being a new head coach. Regardless of how good or bad your team is, you're not going to fill some of these expectations that some people have for you in your first year as a head coach. But when it comes to defense coordinator, there's not many tasks at hand. So you're better off being a coordinator. And hopefully that's what Lou Anarumo does this year and many more years for Cincinnati to come, because I just cannot imagine a Bengals defense without him. I mean, he has done such a phenomenal job these past couple of years for Cincinnati. So when you look at Cincinnati and Buffalo, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but what do you think some of these keys to the game are for Cincinnati to defeat Buffalo on Sunday?
Well, I think one of the things, obviously, it's the biggest thing every game. Just give Joe Burrow a little bit of time to throw. And you saw it against the Ravens. He was getting rid of the ball in 2 seconds on virtually every play because we weren't trusting our offensive line. And I'll take that. He's able to read defenses as quickly or quicker than anybody in the NFL. So you want to just set him up and say, just throw the ball to the open guy immediately. He's the right guy for that role. So that's going to be part of it, is getting the ball out of your hand quickly and keeping Joe Burrow protected. The other thing is, I don't think you should be afraid of their secondary. Poyer's a great player. Tre'Davious White has never been quite the same since the injury. Maybe his game will pick up. The other corners are decent. The slot corner, what Johnson's playing decently. So, they have some skills in the secondary. But when you have Chase and Higgins and Boyd, you shouldn't fear anybody. And I think that, you can't just be like, oh, they have a monster secondary. We're going to have to be really conservative. I think you get the ball to Chase and Higgins and let one of those guys have a breakout game and win this game for you. Because like you said, we don't know how well Mixon's going to do on the ground. We're hoping he does well. I'm kind of treating it as just run the ball to mix it up, run the clock, and let your offense attack a little bit. I'm not really thinking that handing the ball to Joe Mixon 25 times is going to win this game for us. I really think you have to go to – it's going to be a Chase and Higgins. I think those are the keys offensively for us. Defensively, they have a lot of weapons. A lot of people have said that they might have the best skill position players in the NFL. I don't really believe that. I think that we do, and there's other teams that are right up there. But there's a lot of threats all over the place, and you can't stop everybody. So I think the real key is don't let Josh Allen scramble on you, and we're pretty good at stopping that. And don't let Diggs kill you. He's almost good for 100 yards every game. I think, taking the Bill Belichick method of like stopping their best weapon, I guess you just stop Josh Allen on the ground. And then your next task would be stop Diggs in the air. And then you take your chances. All right, is Dawson Knox going to beat us? Is Gabe Davis going to beat us? Is Singletary going to beat us? I'll take my chances on those guys as opposed to Allen with the legs and the cannon arm and Diggs. So defensively, that's what I would be thinking about.
You mentioned this Buffalo secondary, Tre'Davious White, Poyer, some of these guys, Kaiir Elam, their rookie corner. He's played pretty decent this year, but I want to see Burrow maybe attack him, a guy who does not have a ton of experience, kind of, throw towards his way, a guy who, hasn't played a ton throughout his rookie year. But, when you look at this, Bengals offense, everybody talks about Higgins and Chase. I think this is a game where Boyd kind of goes off. When Chase isn't great or Higgins isn't great, odds are that's a game where kind of Boyd goes off. And when you look at the Bengals stats, when Boyd has 100 yards this year and last year, the Bengals are pretty hard to beat. I know they lost a game last year, but it was just by like a game-winning field goal or something like that. I think it was the Packers game, maybe something like that. But when you look at it, when Boyd is going, this offense is normally pretty good because even when your third receiver, if he's going, even if Chase can get you 50, 60, same goes for Higgins. When Boyd goes off, also, I mean, now we have Hurst compared to last season, a mixed catch out of the backfield. The possibilities for this offense are really endless. But yeah, this should be a great game. You just have to protect Burrow. Like even if he gets sacked he's going to get sacked a couple of times. Just hopefully he does not get hit a ton of times. Like if you're going to get the sacks out of the way, fine. But as long as he's not getting hit a ton, even when he's like pressured and stuff like that, when he's not getting sacked, that's kind of important there. But I don't know. This to me, when you look at this Monday night game, just everything that was going heading into it. When you look at the Bills winning streak, the Bengals winning streak, I felt like that game was going to be game of the year. I feel like it had game of the year written all over it. I feel like this game has potential game of the year written all over it as well. These are, in my opinion, I think probably the two best teams in the AFC right now. You can make a case these might be the two best teams in the NFL right now. Their win streaks are very long. Two of the best quarterbacks in the league. But it should be a great one. I cannot wait. I don't feel 100% confident we're going to win because this is a game that I really think could go either way. Like, would I be shocked if we lost? No. Would I be shocked if we won? No. And I know, I think it was maybe a little over a month ago I think it was the week of the Browns game. We were talking the biggest threats to Cincinnati. We both kind of said the Browns because we still had that monkey on our back because we couldn't beat the Browns at that time. And I know I said Buffalo because it's not that I was really nervous about playing Buffalo. It's the fact that I did not want to play the Bills in Buffalo. Now here we are. We're going to be playing in Buffalo this upcoming week. And the Bengals don't have a ton of experience playing cold weather. I know it was cold this past weekend, but really, I mean, our defense played good, but our offense did not play great. Look at the Raiders game in the postseason last year. It was a cold game. Our offense did not play great in that game either. The last time I checked the forecast, they're expecting about 1 inch of snow that game. But yeah, that's something to me kind of, I would say, no, I'm nervous about the most, but something that people need to start talking about more because despite playing in Cincinnati, this Bengals team does not have a whole ton of experience playing cold weather compared to the Bills, some of these other teams. And if it's like a snow and cold game and you're not going to be passing a ton, that's what really concerns me because we were talking about how one-dimensional this Bengals offense is. If it's a snowy game, the offensive line's bad. If you try to get the run going, that could be a long day for this Bengals offense. But this has, in my opinion, potential game of the year written all over it. This really could go either way.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And I didn't know about the snow factor, but if the weather is anywhere somewhat decent, there's going to be a lot of scoring in this game. And, it's one of those, if there's 20 seconds on the clock, either at the end of the game or at the end of the half, you can't count either of these quarterbacks out from scoring a field goal or a touchdown with even minimal time on the clock.
Yeah, this game could be one of those games. Whoever has the ball last might win, or this could, who knows, maybe a defensive battle and it could be like 17-14, who knows. But what would you say is your score prediction for this divisional round matchup between the Bengals and the Bills?
All right, I'm going to say get your popcorn, bet the over on Vegas. Cincinnati Bengals 37, Buffalo Bills 34.
A big scoring game there. That's interesting. I don't care what the score is as long as we win. It could be 2-0, it could be 56-55, whatever. Just as long as we get to win. But I don't know. I don't know what the over is right now. But when you look at this game, I feel like it's going to be kind of a offensive battle to start off. I feel like both teams, when you look at Inarumo, that we've already mentioned, he's one of the best defense coordinators in the league. Leslie Frazier is too. He's done a great job for this defense. But I feel like this could be a high-scoring game in the first half, and then the second half, it might be more of a defensive battle. Because we've seen this from time to time from the Bengals. A team might start off hot, then these second half adjustments kick in, and then our defense is very tough to score against in the second half. I want to say 30-28 Cincinnati. This has, like I said, this will be a great game. I'm just kind of nervous about the weather. It's snowing. That's kind of what concerns me the most. I'm not concerned about playing the Bills. I'm concerned playing at the Bills. I feel like there's a major difference between the two, but cannot wait. I mean, if we do end up winning this game, going to be in the AFC Championship game for the second consecutive season. It just still kind of it seems surreal that this could possibly happen. I mean, we have 4 playoff wins and just barely over a year. Much has changed since the Burrow era has begun. The Dalton era, I mean, 5 playoff losses in a row, and then now so much success this past year. Hopefully, we can continue, go to the Super Bowl again this year, just like we did last year. But should be a good one. So, Frank, can you kind of tell some of the listeners where they can follow you on social media and everything?
Yeah, the name of my show is called The Unofficial Bengals Podcast, and you can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Cincy Bengals Pod.
Yeah, make sure to follow Frank on Instagram, Twitter. Check out his podcast. Has the best Bengals podcast out there. I'll put the links in the description below. You can follow me on Twitter, S2Hein Show. You can follow me on Instagram, The Sports 2 Hein Show. You can subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. If you're new to the channel or you've seen videos before, subscribe and like this video. I really, really appreciate it. That about does it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you all next time on The Sports 2 Hein Show.